Alright, so in the aftermath of us starting to get a lot of these election results finalized and essentially realizing that this was an absolute bloodbath for anybody who was aggressively promoted by Donald Trump, we are now officially starting to see some murmurs within the Republican Party about how Donald Trump is probably not or shouldn't be the future of this party, and that, maybe they should start to think about moving on to somebody like Ron DeSantis. So I got an article here from the New York Times, which gets into a couple of different takes that we've gotten from Republican operatives, some people who have formerly been aligned with Trump, some people who have formerly worked for Donald Trump, and we're definitely starting to see some cracks in the armor surrounding the Teflon Don theory. So they say Trump under fire from within the GOP after the midterm. So what are they talking about here? They say Mr. Trump was seen as largely to blame for the Republicans' underwhelming finish in Tuesday's elections, as a number of the candidates he had endorsed in competitive races were defeated, including nominees for governor and Senate in Pennsylvania and for governor in Michigan, New York, and Wisconsin. And this also could extend to Arizona, because keep in mind, we still have Mark Kelly, who is beating Blake Masters, another Trump candidate, by a pretty significant margin right there. It looks like he is most likely going to pull that out, so that could be another loss from the Senate position. And we still have Carrie Lake running for the governor's position, who has been an aggressive election denier, pro-Trump MAGA candidate as well, and she is still down against Katie Hobbs for the governor's race. Now, Carrie Lake, I think, still has a good chance of winning, but if she does, she's basically going to be the only high-profile, super MAGA candidate that ended up winning a lot of these close races in some of these swing states. So, absolute bloodbath from the perspective of Trump's candidates, and clearly we're having some people who are starting to get a little bit nervous here. So they got a quote. They say Republicans have followed Donald Trump off the side of a cliff, said David Urban, a longtime Trump advisor with ties to Pennsylvania. They also say that former Representative Peter King, a Republican from Long Island who has long supported Mr. Trump, said, quote, I strongly believe that he should no longer be the face of the Republican Party, adding that the party can't become a personality cult. Okay, can't become a personality cult? Really? It seems like you're a little bit late to that. I mean, pretty much everybody within the Republican Party, outside of guys like, Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney, pretty much everybody else has bent the knee. I mean, even guys like Ted Cruz, where, Trump literally said that his dad killed JFK or whatever, and that his wife was straight up ugly. Even Ted Cruz ended up bending the knee, and it got to the point where he was even willing to take the election denying or the election was rigged case to the Supreme Court if it came to that, and argue on behalf of Donald Trump. So, like, pretty much everybody across the board has already made this party a personality cult surrounding Donald Trump, so you might be a little bit late to that, but I guess there's still somewhat of a window of time here where, we're in an interesting position right now where Donald Trump is at basically his weakest point. A lot of people are blaming him for this. We're going to get to so many different takes that I have lined up here from other conservative politicians and pundits, and he's basically at his weakest point. People are blaming him for the midterm flop from the Republican Party, and at the same time, we have Ron DeSantis, who's basically like a rising star within the Republican Party. He already was before this election, but he was like the only Republican who, secured a very dominant lead or a dominant win in some of these elections in Florida. I mean, granted, he had a lot of things that were lining up in his favor down in Florida, changing demographics and elderly population, a lot of like very far-right, Cuban population and other things like that. And also the fact that Democrats nominated an absolutely atrocious corporate Democrat candidate, Charlie Crist, who was just garbage at every single point. So a lot of things lined up in his favor, but still he pulled out, what was it, like a 15, 20-point victory at the end of the day. So you have this interesting war that's sort of brewing right now, where Trump is definitely going to be announcing his presidency, likely within the next week or so. And he's at his weakest point that he's been in years now, or at least since January 6th. And at the same time, you have this rising star Ron DeSantis, who's going to have to make his decision on whether or not he wants to challenge Trump pretty soon, honestly, if he wants to take advantage of this window of time here where Donald Trump has been weakened. So, I mean, this is going to be absolutely hilarious to watch, and I am very excited to see how this war plays out. But they continue here with more takes. This one from Kayleigh McEnany, a former Trump White House press secretary and one of his longtime defenders, and she said on Fox News on Wednesday that her former boss should hold off on his announcement for president at least until after the runoff election for Senate in Georgia. They say, quote, he needs to put it on pause. Absolutely, she said. If I'm advising any contender, no one announces 2024 until we get through December 6th, which is when those Georgia elections, the runoff between Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker, another Trump-backed candidate who lost in these elections. Neither one of them got over 50, so we're headed to that runoff. But I mean, the fact that you have people coming out and basically just saying like, listen, if you're going to run, we really don't want you to run, but if you're going to choose to run, at least wait until after the runoff election so that you don't hurt your own candidate, right? Herschel Walker is only running for this position in the first place because Donald Trump wanted him to and egged him on. So, I mean, even the fact that, like, he is potentially going to hurt his own candidate by announcing his run for president is just absolutely amazing. And, you know, clearly there's this sentiment across the board that, you know, Donald Trump is a significant electoral problem for the Republican Party. And just to give you a perspective in terms of how badly he actually did, they say in 36 House races that Cook Political Report rated as toss-ups, Mr. Trump endorsed just 5 candidates, and each one of them lost on Tuesday. And again, it could get even worse from this point as we are starting to get more results coming in. They continue saying Scott Jennings, a longtime advisor to Mr. McConnell, the Senate Minority Leader, who obviously has a little bit of, underlying beef with Donald Trump in the aftermath of January 6th, but still would, get behind him if he absolutely had to. But Scott Jennings, one of his longtime advisors, pointed to exit polls that showed that Mr. Trump was less popular than President Biden, which is an absolutely impressive feat here, okay? The fact that we have record inflation and all of these other compounding problems that are going on right now, Donald Trump out of office, and still dramatically less popular than Joe Biden is right now. And he said if Mr. Trump wanted to see a Republican elected president in 2024, he should not run. They say that Mr. Jennings suggested that Ron DeSantis, the Florida governor, and Governor Glenn Youngkin of Virginia as potential alternatives. He called for those Republicans to move urgently, pointing to the former president's rapid political recovery after his supporters rioted at the Capitol building after Mr. Trump had falsely told them that his re-election victory had been stolen. He says, quote, "The void has to be filled," Mr. Jennings said. After January 6th, the GOP hesitated and he quickly recovered. DeSantis cannot hesitate. So this is what I'm saying, is that this is going to get really interesting really quickly, because Ron DeSantis has a very small window of opportunity here because, again, similar to after January 6th, when, Trump's initial approval rating and his support within the Republican Party, there were tiny fractures that were within that temporarily, but then he quickly rebounded, right? This could be a similar scenario where, given enough time, people might forget how badly Trump's candidates did and how much of a drag he was on the party overall during the midterm elections, and he's only going to, get stronger from this point on. So you got to utilize this opportunity. If you're Ron DeSantis and you want to beat him in 2024, you kind of got to make some aggressive moves here, and, it's yet to be seen whether or not he's willing to do that. We've obviously gotten, many indications in terms of him coming out and saying that he did want to do it, but, at the end of the day, he hasn't made any firm announcements one way or the other. Now, before we get into some of these other Fox News clips and takes from people like Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro, I want to just play you this clip because this shit was absolutely fucking hilarious. It's not even necessarily related to, the theme of this video, I guess, but this clip just pretty much encapsulates who Donald Trump is as a person and how, laughable it is that he would think that he would be able to walk away from this election completely unscathed or unblamed for a lot of the failures of his candidates. So let's go ahead and watch this.
You've endorsed more than 330 candidates this election cycle. Tonight, win or lose, the results for Republicans, how much of that will be because of Donald Trump?
Well, I think if they win, I should get all the credit, and if they lose, I should not be blamed at all, okay? But it'll probably be just the opposite. When they win, I think they're going to do very well. I'll probably be given very little credit, even though in many cases I told people to run, and they ran, and they turned out to be very good candidates. They've turned out to be very good candidates. But usually what would happen is when they do well, I won't be given any credit, and if they do badly, they will blame everything on me.
Okay, so, I mean, classic Donald Trump there, right? If they do well, I want to be given all of the credit for it. If they do badly, then it's not my fault in any way, shape, or form. So, I mean, again, he was kind of right in that clip in saying that he would be blamed for, their failures, but also, like, you do deserve some blame for their failures, because not only were you pushing people like Herschel Walker and Dr. Oz to run and then backing them aggressively over, like, some of the less, egregious Republican candidates, I guess, not only were you pressuring them to run and backing them in the primaries, but then also you were pushing them behind the scenes to more aggressively back your 2020 election was rigged claims and all of these other bizarre issues that only affect Donald Trump personally, and you just kind of like sabotaged and helped to tank their election prospects within the midterm. So it's like you do deserve a large amount of blame for what just happened in these midterm elections. But classic Donald Trump clip there. Now we're gonna get to a lot of these Fox News clips and a lot of people who are basically just giving the same sentiment that was outlined in that New York Times article and starting to realize that maybe Donald Trump is not so invincible. So let's go ahead and watch this first one here from Fox News.
Doug, first to you. Karl Rove writes today, Wall Street Journal, a number of pieces in the Journal editorial page talking about Donald Trump, talking about the results. Here's Rove's take. With no red wave, Trump is out at sea. The GOP fielded too many novices who struggled with crafting a message, raising funds, and waging effective campaigns. Some were also knuckleheads with strange beliefs and closets full of problems. Many of these remarkably weak candidates came courtesy of Donald Trump, who did not vet his endorsements. You agree with that point?
Yes, and we could go back to 2010 and 2012, where we saw a lot of these terrible first-time candidates that caused Senate races to fall by the wayside in Nevada, Delaware, Indiana, Missouri. And this is why Mitch McConnell was warning well in advance that we have a candidate quality problem. But what we've seen is a real intensification of this problem from top to bottom, not just Senate candidates, but House candidates, Secretary of State candidates, and governors and the like. And it's what I call the my-pillowization of the Republican Party.
I mean, I guess that's a good point there at the end, right? I mean, that really is what's happened here. I mean, you look at some of these candidates, right? It's not just like a mild candidate quality problem. Like, these guys are complete fucking jokes. I mean, the fact that it was even close between Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker, the fact that it was even semi-close between John Fetterman and Dr. Oz, that's completely wild in and of itself. But, those candidates were complete fucking jokes, top to bottom. I mean, what was Dr. Oz even running on? He was running on basically saying that, John Fetterman is the reincarnation of Bernie Sanders, the most popular senator in the entire country for like 10 years running now, or he's also just a lapdog for Joe Biden, and he's going to push through all of these big spending packages, and look at him, he supports socialized medicine, and he supports, raising the minimum. I mean, they had no coherent election strategy other than just trying to like make fun of John Fetterman for having a stroke, and in Herschel Walker's case saying that, Raphael Warnock is like this radical socialist or something like that. And what were the Democratic candidates just saying on that side? I mean, you look at somebody like John Fetterman, the reason he blew Dr. Oz out of the water isn't because like, it's just Dr. Oz and he just has these character flaws or anything like that. John Fetterman did a great job at painting him as this out-of-state elitist carpetbagger, snake oil salesman type of guy, for sure, just on the character of Dr. Oz on that front. But he was also running an aggressive left-wing economic populist campaign. He was talking about raising the minimum wage. He was talking about universal health care. He was talking about transitioning away from fossil fuel usage, put the fracking comments aside. He was running on, things like student debt and all of these things that are massively popular policies, the child tax credit, a Build Back Better, all of those different policies that were included in that. That's what he was running on, right? Things that will materially improve the lives of average working class people. That's the main reason why he won, on top of, things like protecting abortion rights, the overturning of Roe v. Wade, which is something that a lot of these Republican commentators and pundits have just been completely avoiding that issue, right? While it is true that a lot of these candidates had major, quality issues and character issues and a lot of skeletons in their closet, for sure, but at the same time, none of them are talking about Roe v. Wade being overturned and the fact that that has wild support among the American people to protect abortion rights, and all of these Democratic candidates had that as a major boost to their campaigns. That was, the one or two issue, depending on which state you're talking about. I think in Pennsylvania, it was the #1 issue, even above inflation. So you can't just like ignore that and ignore the fact that, you finally have this massive success on overturning abortion rights after 40 years of trying to do it, and then just not talk about that as a part or a major reason, or maybe even the main reason as to why you lost these elections. It's like, they're kind of just glossing over a pretty major issue there. But now we're going to move on to another Fox News clip. This one is of Jesse Waters, who is talking about some of the failures of the Republican parties. Let's see what he had to say.
McConnell spent close to $400 million on these Senate candidates. I don't know what goes on behind the scenes, but that is a lot of money. And we didn't pick up a single seat. So either some of these candidates are garbage or the money's not being well spent. But Trump's sitting on a massive war chest in Mar-a-Lago. Where'd that money go? We don't know.
All right, so again, I mean, it's true that, you're dumping all of this money, hundreds of millions of dollars, into all of these various races. You don't end up picking up a single seat in the Senate in all likelihood. I mean, that is kind of embarrassing, but, he takes a shot at Donald Trump there, saying, where is, all of this money that Donald Trump has been raising? Why wasn't he spending millions and millions and millions of dollars on all of these races? So, I mean, I guess a fair point there, but multiple Fox News hosts now turning against Donald Trump. We got another one here. This one is Laura Ingraham, and she is giving her take in terms of what she thinks Republicans should do in order to avoid these types of failures in the future. So let's go ahead and watch this one.
So going into 2024, the Republicans are going to be looking for candidates who are focused on winning, not just making a point or settling a score. So to really change the country, we're going to have to win, and we have to win over voters outside our traditional base. That means young people, too. That's got to be the goal for the next presidential election. The populist movement is about ideas. It is not about any one person. If the voters conclude that you're putting your own ego or your own grudges ahead of what's good for the country, they're going to look elsewhere.
Okay, so I mean, she's kind of right in the sense that, you know, this right-wing populist movement needs to be less about Donald Trump as an individual figure and more about just like broadly appealing to, you know, right-wing issues that people support. Sure, I guess, but at the same time, you guys are just fucking fake populists, right? You're not actual economic populists in the sense that you want to, you know, pass policies and legislation to materially improve the lives of working class people. You don't support the overwhelmingly popular policies like Medicare for all, like a $15 minimum wage, like the student debt cancellation. In fact, you are actively trying to undermine those issues, right? Republicans want to gut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. They want to give tax cuts to the billionaire class. None of these motherfuckers are actual populists. The only ways that they are populist is in the sense that they are, you know, appealing to, in some ways, popular discontent in regards to culture war issues, right? That's the only way that they're even marginally populist. But this is why you're losing these elections, even though you're trying to, you know, pretend as if you were running on populist agendas, right? I mean, the idea that Republicans or conservatives are ever going to win over a significant majority or even a small minority of young voters is just completely fucking laughable. You guys are your whole agenda is in service of something that not only disproportionately benefits the wealthy, the rich in this country, corporations, etc., but also benefits older Americans, right? That's part of why you are the conservative movement. What are you conserving? You're conserving the power structure, the economic power that is disproportionately concentrated in older, more wealthy, and also disproportionately white Americans. That's your whole thing. That's why the viewer demographics on a channel like Fox News is pretty much only 55 plus or 50 plus at least. I mean, that's your entire base. That's your whole strategy. You're never going to win over young voters unless you're willing to move to the left on economic issues or on things like, you know, marijuana. I mean, this is somebody, Laura Ingraham, who has literally had graphics up on her show that are basically just like, you know, the reincarnation of like 80s or 70s Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan reefer madness bullshit, okay? And she's pretending as if they are going to have a single chance in hell at winning over young voters. I mean, it's just laughable how delusional they are in one sense, but also, you know, kind of starting to understand how bad Donald Trump and his movement have been for the future electability of their party. So we got another one here from Candace Owens. It's a 6-minute clip. Not going to make you guys watch through the entirety of it, but they have a quote here, and this was actually posted by the Daily Wire, so that's Ben Shapiro's outlet here, so clearly he's giving a little bit of an endorsement on this. She said, "What I'm saying is that Trump needs to take a good look in the mirror, and he needs to exercise a tiny bit more humility when he gets something wrong." So again, coming from somebody who is typically a 100% Trump sycophant, that's a pretty big shift there, right? We got another one here from Tim Pool, Pim Tool over here. He says, "Holy shit, LOL, Trump is over." And this was in regards to somebody else saying, "Someone please shut him up," because Donald Trump posted this on his Truth Social, where he has been absolutely coping and seething and losing his mind on his own social media platform. So this is, again, him sort of taking a little bit of a shot at Ron DeSantis. And honestly, I don't think that this one is going to land well at all. It honestly kind of more so comes across as like a, you know, an ex-boyfriend, like desperately showing up at the house of his ex-girlfriend and like begging her to take him back. But I mean, here we go. He says, "Now that the election in Florida is over and everything went quite well, shouldn't it be said that in 2020, I got 1.1 million more votes in Florida than Ron D got this year? 5.7 million to 4.6 million? Just asking." Okay, so that's Donald Trump, right? I mean, how pathetic is this? That, you know, you have an election scenario where basically everybody that you backed across the board did absolutely terribly, and then you're going to focus in on the one state where somebody, your biggest opponent potentially coming up here, Ron DeSantis, is like the only guy in the country who did phenomenally well in his election, and you're going to use this as an opportunity when you are at your weakest point to go attack him over the fact that, what, you got 1 million or so more votes than him during a presidential election year than he managed to get in a midterm election? I mean, again, it's so fucking pathetic at this point. We got another take here from Ben Shabibo. He says, "Here's the basic takeaway from the election 2022 so far. Number one, Democrats will not change course on anything. They wildly outperformed expectations, except in Florida. Biden is their 2024 nominee unless he is fully incapacitated. Well, let's hope for that outcome, because we are absolutely fucked if Biden is our president again going into 2024. He absolutely needs to step down and be replaced, as long as it's not with Pete Buttigieg or Kamala Harris replacing him. But he continues saying that number three, Republicans wildly underperformed and heads should roll. He says number four, there's a lot of hope for the Republican coalition given their performance with Hispanic and black voters, but their candidate quality was poor and their leadership was either absent or counterproductive. He says candidate quality matters. Underlying dynamics are not strong enough to drive bad candidates to victory. True. Donald Trump was a major drag on Republicans from his picks to his antics. He says Trump picked bad candidates, spent almost no money on his hand-picked candidates, and then proceeded to crap on the Republicans who lost and didn't sufficiently bend the knee. This will have a 2024 impact. So, I mean, again, he's pointing out here all of these flaws with Donald Trump not spending his money, not sufficiently backing his own candidates, picking terrible candidates in the first place, and then also attacking the people who didn't fully bend the knee and dive into the election denialism and shit like that. So he's kind of right on that part of the analysis. He finishes off here saying number eight, except for DeSantis, who was a leader, an excellent candidate, and an organizer in his own party, leading to a Florida red tsunami. So, I mean, again, there were so many different factors that led to Ron DeSantis having this overwhelming victory, including voter suppression and voter laws and redistricting that he did under his watch that dramatically helped him out. So, it wasn't solely, commendable for Ron DeSantis from the right-wing perspective, but definitely it seems like, again, a shift is happening here within the Republican coalition. And it's wild to see somebody like Donald Trump, who has been so, strong within the Republican Party for so long and has been able to basically just bully and cast aside anybody who tries to doubt him. And now you're starting to see significant weakness that is growing. We have another one here from Mike Cernovich. He says Trump has zero shot at the 2024 general election. After tonight, this isn't up for debate. I was around in 2015 when he had no chance and accurately said that he would win. Through the biggest inauguration event in 2017, times change, or he changed, or whatever. DeSantis in 2024, or accept total defeat. One more here from Caleb Hole. He says, we need a Republican overhaul. Trump pushed a bunch of candidates that suck, and everyone knew it, but we didn't have a choice but to go along. We had everything on our side and missed the mark. DeSantis is the new head of our party, not a 76-year-old man. So again, across the board, this is a very, a prevalent sentiment that I've been seeing, that a lot of people are starting to turn towards DeSantis or Donald Trump. So now we end with this. This shit is going to be fucking hilarious. This upcoming war between Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump, it's going to be amazing to watch. I don't know who the fuck is going to come out on the other side of it, but we had this piece that just dropped a couple days ago to give you an indication in terms of where we're going right now. So, he attacked him over the Florida vote count and saying, I actually got 1 million more votes than Ron DeSantis. We've seen him take a couple of other shots there with the Ron DeSanctimonious nickname and whatever. And now we have this. Trump threatens to reveal unflattering information about DeSantis if he runs. So we got a quote here. He says, if he runs, Mr. Trump said of Mr. DeSantis to a handful of reporters. And he continued saying that if he did run, I will tell you things about him that won't be very flattering. I know more about him than anybody other than perhaps his wife, who is really running his campaign. So Trump basically coming out here in his, biggest moment of weakness that we have seen in a long time, and using it as a chance to, in a lot of pathetic different examples that we have gotten, go after Ron DeSantis. So again, I'm just going to sit back, eat my popcorn, hang out, because this shit is going to be absolutely fucking hilarious. I think, there's a split happening within the Republican Party. They're even more split than the Democratic Party arguably is right now, even with everything that happened with Bernie getting screwed over and all of, the rest of, the ongoing war between progressives and corporate Democrats and all of that. Republicans are in a worse shape right now. And again, it'll be very interesting to see what Ron DeSantis chooses to do in this moment, because again, as they were pointing out at the beginning there, he has a short window of time now where Trump is looking sort of weak. People are starting to jump ship. Pundits are starting to turn against him. He's being blamed for the underperformance in the 2022 elections, and kind of deservingly so. So is Ron DeSantis going to take his opportunity now? Is he going to announce his run for president right after Trump does? Is he going to let, Trump run solely and then Republicans get blasted in 2024? I don't know what's going to happen, but this shit is going to be amazing to watch regardless.
Everyone is saying good politic guy has the best politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying